Welcome back to The Honest Athletes. We are starting with obviously episode 1, January. It's very rainy, but hopefully this episode will bring a little bit of light to your lives. We have a special guest today. We're really excited to have this guest on because we're going to pick his brains, but we want him to start by introducing himself so that he can let you know who he is. So Sonny, if you could take it away for a second.
Good morning, Lauren. Good morning, Hannah. Thanks for having me on, first of all. Guest number 1 for the year. That's always an honour. But I'm Sonny Trigg. I'm the swimsuit guy. And I guess I'm best summarised as just a bit of a swim nerd, a swim fan, a swim geek, lover, any of those things, all of the above. And, I've been a swimmer all my life. I still get in the pool regularly, even if I maybe don't compete so much. I work actively as a swimming coach. I'm a head coach for the Dartmoor Darts down here in Devon. I also do online training programs. So if you're someone who swims alone, masters, age group, whatever, check out my website and, maybe pick a training program. And beyond that, I make YouTube videos. So the YouTube videos started out reviewing tech suits. They went on to making vlogs and everywhere in between. I mainly just chat to a camera about things swimming and try and show a little bit of passion. So I think that's me in a quick snippet.
That's awesome. Kind of just wondered, you were talking about where you were reviewing swimsuits. So how did that come about? Like why swimsuits? What was kind of special about picking swimsuits to review them?
So I guess I sort of started swimming competitively in about 2005, 2006, which, as you'll remember, Hannah, we had the bodysuits really starting to pick up. So the first major competition I remember watching was in 2009, the Rome World Championships. Again, you'll remember, where I think it was like 48 world records were set because of the introduction of these polyurethane bodysuits, the Jacket JO1, the Arena X Glide, the Adidas Hydrofoil. And it was just like, I was like, whoa, this is so cool. So, I was way too young to have a bodysuit, but I saved up and I worked all summer and I got my own bodysuit and I was like, this is so cool. I don't think I even benefited from them as a swimmer because I was like 50 kilos and not that good, but I just loved putting it on. I loved the whole process of having this bodysuit, and it made swimming even cooler for me. And obviously then they got banned in 2010 and we went to jammers and knee skins for women. And I don't know, like suits just were dull for a little while, in my opinion. And I always still try all the different brands and import some from Italy and import some from Japan and all of this sort of thing. And I guess I got to a point where when I moved to Oman, I just wanted to create some sort of content. And my first thought was, well, let's review swimsuits, mainly because I wanted to tell people about this really cool swimsuit I'd found. But secondly, because I wanted to get to a point, maybe I could have connections of brands that I might not be able to pay for swimsuits, which, it sounds pretty shallow, but that was kind of my first sort of thought is, hey, maybe I can just not pay for swimming stuff, which I did actually achieve. So, it then ended up being way more than that. And I'm super glad I'd done it.
Work smarter, not harder, Sonny, and you've definitely cracked that one. And also aligned it with your passion, which is obviously swimming. And that's something that I discussed with Hannah literally the other day, of how passionate we see you are with swimming. Like, there's no question about it. We see you on social media. We see you go from obviously swimming, reviewing things, and then you're at the ISL. Where did the passion come from? Like, where did it start? Do you come from a swimming family? Were you the first one? Were you the pioneer and then just progress from there?
A lot of things just come out of luck, I guess. And I guess that's kind of how it is. But my dad played golf. He loves golf. He has since taken up masters swimming at points in his life because of me swimming, but, no swimming background in my family whatsoever. And when I think I was 8, my parents took me traveling for an extended period of time to see if there was a better place to live. And that just meant I spent a lot of time in the water, just in like hotel pools and stuff like that. And then when I got back to the UK, I moved to a village that had like a 6-meter pool in our primary school. And they were like, hey, you're a pretty good swimmer. You should go to a swimming club. So I went to a swimming club and they let me in. I was, I think, 9 at this point. My little sister was 6 and they let her in as well, which is obviously way too young these days for like joining an actual competitive swimming club. She was always a little better than me, but I was just obsessed from day one. I used to have like a little notebook when I was about 11, which had the PBs of every kid in my squad's time. And then I also made like a rankings, like I basically just wrote out the ASA rankings for my county to see who was ranked where. And it was always a bit of a thing. Like if someone wants to know their PB, I'd have memorized it. And that was from like day 12. So, or year 12. So by the time I'm like 14 years old, if you asked me what I wanted to be, I'd probably have told you a swimming coach.
Actually made me smile so much hearing you say that, the amount of research and just like general interest in knowledge, because I do believe a lot of swimmers be a student of your sport, know little bits about it. We spend so much time training in it. It's important to get a good grasp of it. And the fact that you from such a young age had that interest in it is really heartwarming to hear. And the fact that you now are a coach, knowing that you can expand your knowledge and expand that passion to the next generation of athletes and current generation as well, because it's not just, age group swimmers that you work with. Seeing you working with Chad Le Clos and Siobhan Huey as well. It's incredible to think that, from where you started to where you are now, that the journey's been pretty incredible. So the next question I guess I want to ask is, as well, you said that you're aspiring to, be a coach. What's the dream now? Is the dream still the same, or do you have any, aspirations? Because I feel you're the type of person that, you achieve one goal, you want to set the next and the next. So where do you see yourself in, say, like 5 years' time?
I'm not sure. It's a question I ask myself regularly at the moment because, I mean, my journey, I guess, is very unorthodox, but also it's kind of not what I anticipated. So, I think I thought early on, I probably knew I wasn't naturally good enough at swimming. I think I worked hard, but not maybe as hard as some of the people around me. But I think I sort of thought, nah, mate, I don't think I'm ever going to be on either of you ladies level as a competitive athlete. But coaching seemed to make sense. I loved the thought of it. And I guess any coach sort of going into coaching wants to, I guess the dream is to do like a Bob Bowman, Michael Phelps thing, right? And you get a swimmer at 9 and you then somehow coach them all the way to their Olympic champion. And, the reality is it's just really hard to do that these days because no clubs, especially in the UK, are set up to do anything like that, And if you're at a grassroots age group club and you get a swimmer at 9 and they're winning national medals by 13, 14, there's about 6 private schools that starting to persuade them to come over and offering scholarships. And I'm not calling them schools out. I'm just saying that's kind of how things work these days. And so that pure dream is really difficult. But I guess the next step down is to coach at any sort of major competition and work with that level of athletes, which again, I because I've not come from an elite background straight into elite coaching, that was something that, I don't know, it could have been a whole career of work and building towards. And then I kind of skipped to that last year and got to coach at World Championships and Commonwealth Games and ISL. So I don't know, it's that sort of fast tracked, but I still would like to, I don't know, build to that in my own sort of a slightly more organic way. So I don't know, I think I would like to be in a position where I'm taking athletes from sort of a higher national level and making that transition with them and helping them make that transition to senior international teams. That if there's a position I can be doing that on a regular basis, that's like my dream. And I think that's where I enjoy coaching the most. I mean, yeah, that's what I have fun with.
I have so many questions to ask. The next one that I want to ask is, what are the differences between when you were swimming in coaching and the whole, I don't know, atmosphere and everything, and the ethos of training then versus now? Because there are differences. I've stepped back into coaching a team not far from me, Altrincham, just once or twice a week, and there's big differences. But I'd like to hear from your point of view what the differences are at the minute.
I don't think that's as simple a question as like, what are the differences? Because there's so many different swimming clubs, and like I've seen that from just my past 6 years. I've coached in the Middle East, I've coached in South Africa, I've coached in the UK, and the atmospheres just from one to the other is so varied. So I think whenever I change sort of coaching culture, I get a little bit of a shock with that anyway. I definitely think there's a softer approach now, and you can take that how you want to take it. I think partially that's good. I think partially that's a shame that coaches have to be so protective of themselves compared to they once were. But I think at the same time, there's enough reasons why that's had to be the case, and that needs to be the case, because there's a line between good coaching and really, really bad coaching. So maybe that's something you've seen. But beyond that, like, I don't really see a massive difference in terms of like general atmosphere. Again, because there's so many different levels of club. I went and visited my old club team, Ipswich, about 2 weeks ago, just before Christmas, and it was like stepping in a time machine. Like, I just got so much nostalgia, and I'm sure both of you ladies have come across Dave Champion, my old coach, in your lives, and like, he said the same things. He still had the nicknames for 3 or 4 athletes in the squad. Like, the motivation was still as good as it always was, and I don't know, it was just like, wow, I'm like 14 again, back at a Thursday night session, about to work hard. And it was beautiful, and it was so nice to see a club so untouched. They still have, Team Ipswich have the best sort of discipline of anyone I've ever seen. They get on poolside, they automatedly, whatever the word is, do their pre-pool, get ready, get put in a lane, get in. Everyone's in on the hour, on the minute. Like, no one's, as Dave would say, faffing around. And it's just really, really good. So I don't know. I think that sort of brought me the opposite of what you feel, Lauren, and that clubs have stayed the same. But then I go and see it, like a program like, I don't know, some of the ones down in Devon, and it's such a far cry from what Ipswich is like.
Yeah, I kind of get that nostalgia, and Dave's an absolute legend. Like, it's so nice to hear as well that he's still doing what he's doing and still holding on to that. And I think a lot of coaches hold like core values, and some of those coaches who are still doing what they're doing, it's their coaching philosophy and the fact that they're confident enough to stay with it. I do feel a lot of the age grouper clubs are staying the same. I think it's possibly more the high-end elite ones that are possibly changing, and I don't know if that's more influence from the governing bodies, whether because there's maybe more an injection of investment in those areas and maybe they have to change because of that money injection. But it is good to see age group clubs still staying the same, because there is something nostalgic and lovely about it, because it's about building that grassroots work ethic. So you were speaking there about Commonwealth Games, World Championships, ISL, being a coach. What was your experience being at those competitions like? Because we don't get to speak to many coaches who actually get to tell us what those experiences are. So I'd love to hear from your perspective what it was like for you.
Yeah, so I kind of, again, didn't come into this from a background where I've swum at anything above, British championships. So like, I think the step from swimming at a national level competition to going to one of those meets is just absolutely like radically different. But I guess it was all kind of built up to by doing the ISL, which, again, I know you've swum in the ISL, Hannah, and that's a different meet in its own right. So I kind of went to the ISL before any major international. So you have these 2-hour meets. They're fast paced. I think something that people missed about the ISL when it was on was how much people genuinely cared about winning the meets. Like I always, when I watched it, I loved watching it, but I thought these swimmers are there to make money. They don't care about Energy Standard or Aqua Centurions or whatever. But they did. Like, you know, everyone is like going wild in the stands, because I think that elite swimmers have been so isolated from things like Arena League for so long that they've been given this opportunity to actually race for a team, and they're absolutely loving it. So I guess I went from the ISL, which is one of the best team experiences I've ever done in swimming, to the World Short Course Championships, which was done in the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi, which is just an amazing arena. It's this awesome pop-up short course pool, you know, and there was just tons of fast swimming. And it was, I don't know, it was really interesting just to see the level of emotion behind the athletes. I remember sitting like 5 seats away from Kira Toussaint, who'd missed the 50 backstroke final when Maggie McNeil broke her world record. And I don't know, like it's interesting to see the level of emotion and just the care and the personality that all these swimmers have, that you as swimmers would have had. And I just think the media, I'm not saying they should have put her on the TV when that happened, but I think they do need to do a better job of creating characters, personalities, and storylines when selling this sport. And I think that's ultimately something I've really tried to do, and I'm sure you try and do, is convey that, you know, there's stories to tell, and more interest in swimming than just someone won a gold medal.
So following on from that, then, what has been your, I'm going to ask for both, what has been your lowest moment as a coach that you've thought, oh, right, okay, this is low, I need to sort this out, but also the highest moment where you've been like, this is amazing?
So, I mean, low moments happen, like, I guess, fairly regularly, because I'm ultra critical. Like last night, I was really unimpressed with the session I wrote and delivered. I was at the Mount Kelly pool. It was a long course session, and I've only been in this role like a week, so I'm still working out the kids, and it just wasn't a good session. Like I thought, I don't want to say that they were better than they are. I just thought they were more conditioned than they are, and I definitely wrote them too. I like working hard, but it was a bit silly, and I was peeved with myself, because I feel like every minute of training is valuable, and you can't just lose a session like that. And I adjusted it on the fly, and I try to, you know, build it back up. But I feel like, yeah, that sort of thing happens regularly, and I'm quite critical of myself. But by far the biggest low was at the Commonwealth Games when Chad comes second in the 200 butterfly. It was kind of like one of them surreal things, because that would have been the plan for the last sort of 6 months, and dialing in and winning that 200 butterfly. And there was so much ridiculous pressure on him to win. I mean, like, I'd already spoken to Hannah in the studio at this point. We had a film crew making a documentary on Chad, to a point that when we parked up to walk to warm up, we had like 2 men with massive cameras on their shoulders filming us, like waiting for us to drive into the Sandwell Aquatic Centre. They had followed, like, and been in the car for every training session in Plymouth a week up to the competition. So they like made us have conversations about winning the competition and stuff. Like it was just absurd pressure. And you know, even to a minute before, I still didn't think he could get beaten. I knew how well Lewis was swimming, but I still didn't think he could get beaten. And it's so weird when he got overtaken in the last 20 meters. Like my whole world went numb. But then everyone's saying like, "Hey, good job! You know, Chad's 30, just got a silver medal." And it's hard not to be. And I wasn't rude, but it's hard not to just be like, "Are you having a laugh?" Because you forget, because you're so dialed in. And you know what probably could end up being like the most accomplished thing I do as a coach, which is coach a Commonwealth medal, was like what I see as my biggest failure. And that's still, like, I'm still, I guess, coming to terms with that. You know, I've watched the race back a few times, and God, it's painful. God, it's painful. But in terms of the best, I go back to the earlier days in my coaching, when I was in Oman with the BSM Marlins, and I coached a group of swimmers that are like 13 to 15. They were like high regional level, low national level swimmers. I guess like some were regional, some qualified for nationals, a couple of medaled and finaled. But they just were like the most enthusiastic bunch. They used to get to training like an hour early, just to like hang out with me coaching the younger squads, and they would like, I'd have to shoo them off poolside an hour after their sessions, and they just loved swimming. It was ridiculous. And like, I don't know, every session, if we'd done something fast, they would like, whoever won would get on the lane rope and celebrate and like full pop off. And it's like, you just won a descend 50, you know, but like, it wasn't in like a malice way. Like they all loved it. Like whoever won on the day, they'd all cheer. And I've never had an atmosphere like that in the pool since. And I've had some good ones. And I don't know, any PB any of them got just was brilliant. Like that's, and I'm still like a complete purist like that today. Like any athlete I work with gets a PB. I just absolutely love it. It's just the best thing that can happen. So every time I had a PB is a high of my career, I guess.
It's incredible to hear your experiences there, and thank you for being so honest as well and quite open with it, because especially when you talk about the lows of being a coach, it's hard. And really respect what you're feeling and what you're going through. And for us, it was a really interesting insight to see what the pressures were, because as you say, sometimes the media don't fully portray everything that goes on. We only saw the race as it happened. So for you to kind of let us in on that bit was really important for everyone to hear. So I guess you're so passionate and so enthusiastic about what you do. What advice would you give, say, a young age group swimmer who has maybe hit a plateau or hit a bit of a wall? They, maybe are struggling for motivation, struggling to turn up. Is there any advice or anything that you would do personally as a coach to maybe help that young athlete get through this kind of sticking point?
I think it, again, I can't talk for every coach out there, but I think as coaches, we need to be better at celebrating small victories. And I don't just by that mean a personal best, because that ends up being quite a large victory, especially, you ladies will know how important a PB would have been probably for years towards the end of swimming. And I think a small victory could be like the fastest you've done something for a week in training, or you've tried something new in training and you've done better at it than ever before. And we can, as coaches, we can set challenges that we create to make an athlete feel good. We control the environment. And so for the coaches of them kids that are having plateaus, find them victories, create them opportunities to get victories in a way that you can manage, because we really can. And then for those kids, it's take a step back from the big picture and your ultimate dream of being Michael Phelps, and think more about the enjoyment of what you're getting to experience. And it sounds really backwards, but if you don't love, and I mean love swimming, then maybe you should find something else. And I'm not trying to do that to deter swimmers from the sport, but if you don't leave training at least 90% of the time with a smile on your face, you can have them bad sessions, you can be pissed off, that's allowed. But if you don't leave the majority of the time because you've hung out with your mates, you have a good rapport with your coach, and you enjoy working hard, then it just isn't for you. You have to have that thing in you that loves the satisfaction of working hard, because otherwise you're just never gonna fully take everything out of it. And if you love all them things and you've hit a plateau, then you will get through it. But if you don't love those things, that's half the reason you've plateaued anyway. And I think it's also okay to take a step back. I think taking a step back from swimming and actually maybe, like, if you're doing 10 sessions a week and plateauing, go 6 sessions a week. If you're doing 6 sessions a week and plateauing, go 4 sessions a week. Get yourself a couple of evenings off, go and play some football, or go around a mate's house and do other social things. And you'll probably end up finding you swim faster because you enjoy the time you spend swimming more. And it'll also let you reflect to see if swimming's the thing you want to do. If you cut your sessions in half and you're like, God, I really miss Wednesday night training, then you've rediscovered that love. Whereas if you're like, oh, I want to cut my sessions in half again, well, that's okay as well. And I really want to keep swimmers in the sport, but not if they're being forced by parents or, mentally tortured by coaches into never missing a day and not really loving it. And I just wanted to say another cool thing on the celebrating small victories. But when I was in the ISL in Eindhoven last year, there's like a big bowl of complimentary chocolates in like the foyer. And Tom Rushton used to just basically take as many as he could. And every swimmer who got a season best, which basically because the season had started at ISL and you're getting faster as you go, pretty much every other race was a season best for our swimmers. So you'd get out the pool and give a chocolate. And we just used that between me and Tom, like as a thing to just level expectations for everything going forwards. So it's Tom's favorite video ever. He's shown it at coaching conventions all across the world. And it's after Siobhan breaks the world record in 200 freestyle. And she comes over and he gives her the season best chocolate. It's just, I don't know, it's a beautiful moment because it was a season best, but also a world record. And I don't know, I think it's just good coaching on, not fixating on a world record and just, hey, season best, and what that ends up being. So I don't know, I like that story.
What an answer. Thank you for that question, Hannah, because that I think in agreement. I was watching you as well whilst Sonny was talking there, and we were both like, what an answer. This is amazing. I knew you were good, Sonny, because there's no way that you could have done what you've done over social media and be involved at the ISL and all these kinds of things and have these successes without being good. But that was great. That was honestly a great bit of, and Hannah's, I can see that you're like, yes, I agree. So thank you for that. I think that's something we'll clip and we'll have to put everywhere, to be honest. So that's brilliant. Now, something that's really good and something that I appreciate, and I'm sure most swimmers do, is seeing their coach get in and do it still a little bit. So I raced at the Arena League the other week for Altrincham, and that was an experience. But I was like, I have to nail my skills because I can't be hounding my group and not do my skills. I nearly died, Sonny, but that's a different episode. But it was great. And the thing is, you still get in and race. And me and Hannah were talking about this and saying how wonderful it is because the swimmers see that, appreciate it. And you just have that little bit more respect sometimes when you're getting in and doing it. What's the reason for that? Is it because you still love to race?
First of all, I will be finding as much evidence of that swim as I can after this. I'll at least find the time. If I can find a video, I'll be even happier. But in terms of me still swimming, I guess I transitioned from competitive swimming into coaching pretty slowly. So I guess I didn't go to sixth form, and I was swimming teaching basically as full-time as you can swim and teach. So I had like 25 hours a week of lessons for my council, schools, everything. And on top of that, I was still swimming full time. And they got to a point where I was just like, I'm so fed up with this teaching. It's time for me to start coaching. I applied for my courses, and Dave Champion said, you can start volunteering with our top squad as much as you want and getting paid for doing some of the younger squads as well. So I think I transitioned then. That year would have been 2016. I still swam Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with Team Ipswich, and then all the other days I either volunteered to coach the top squad or actually coached the A and the B squad at Team Ipswich. So I was still swimming 3 times a week and competing, but also starting to move into that coaching role. And actually that year I won a regional senior title for the first time. I swam PBs in every event, and I was swimming 3 times a week. And I think that really got me thinking and started shaping my mindset towards training. So the year later, in 2017, when I moved to Oman to coach the BSM Marlins, I was still like off a season where I went PBs off of 3 sessions a week. So I got to Oman, and there's like this really good social scene with the teachers, and they kind of want to go every weekend to Dubai. It's like a 4-hour road trip, and you can party and spend a load of money, and that's not really me. So I kind of started swimming because we had this 25-meter pool with no one used in the day. So I'd coach in the morning, have a nap and have breakfast or whatever I'd done, and then I'd go and train. And I started off 3 times a week, and I went to a meet after training for like 2 months on my own, and I swam all PBs again. So then I upped it to 4 times a week and nearly got a national medal. And that season, and the next season I upped it to 5 times a week and done even better and still PB'd. And into the COVID year, I went up to 6 times a week and still PB'd in every event. So I think I just chose to train on my own in the time I had and not go and party in Dubai every weekend, which I don't regret in any way. And it allowed me to make videos. It allowed me to do all the things you mentioned. Like I always found it unorthodox, coaching and swimming at the same time. But I guess between the ages of 21 and 24, so I was still fairly young. And it only had beneficial effects for the swimmers, in my honest opinion. Like that they looked up to me like nothing else as a swimmer, and I nailed all them things. Like they'd sometimes catch me train because they'd go to school, they'd have like an hour between school finishing and training starting, and I'd be finishing up my sessions. They'd come and like just yell things that I'd say to them in training, like oxygen is overrated, or go crazy if I breathed in the last 5 meters or something. I don't know. It was just like this thing that I thought was just great, and I loved it at the time. And it's funny because it's evolved through the years, and I've not really trained much over the last 18 months. But we done a local Plymouth meet about 5 weeks before the Commonwealth Games, and it was like the only meet in the area that Chad could race in some capacity. It was short course, but we thought we'd give it a go. And we done a relay, which was Max and Joe Litchfield, Chad, my dad, me, and then my best mate Jake Tyson, who's swam at Ipswich with me, who wrote Chad's strength program for the last year. And that was our 6x50 freestyle relay. And it was just, I don't know, it was one of the best days of my life. It was just an awesomely cool thing to be able to do. So yeah, I love being able to do that sort of thing. And also we all need to stay fit, right? So that's what motivates me to go and swim every now and again.
That's awesome and so refreshing to hear. And I love the fact that the kids get involved, because in some sense you're teaching them, because you know that they're listening to you, and the fact that they're applying what you've taught them to back at you is actually that's really, really funny. So do you have 2 questions? Do you have a favorite race that you've done as your time as a swimmer? Like, it doesn't have to be winning medals, but is there a standout swim for you that you hold as like a favorite race? And what race have you seen, whether it's in person or on TV, that's your favorite race? So favorite race that you've done personally, and then your favorite race to watch in, I guess, history of swimming.
I'll quickly do a favorite race of mine. It was either between my first ever swim at nationals. I qualified back when it was qualifying times. I qualified to the 100th, like a 100th slower, and I missed it. I equaled the qualifying time. I was obviously the slowest competitor. Heat 1 lane, it was 3 in on my heat, so it was like heat 1 lane 5 or 2 or whatever it was, and I dropped like 1.5 seconds and just had the best swim ever at that point in my life, and nearly made a semi-final at nationals. I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then the other one was when I moved to Oman. My PB for 50 freestyle was 24.1, I think, and like I tried to make myself a sprinter, and I really wanted to go 22 point. So when I went 22 point eventually, I was just super stoked with it. It was in a heat, and yeah, I was just super happy that I'd done that. In terms of favorite race to watch, I could probably give you a favorite race for every year since 2009, but I think recently, I live commentated the World Short Course Championships on my channel. Hannah come and joined one day. It was I had great fun doing it. And Jordan Crooks's 50 freestyle, the semi-final. I actually made a video on this the other day. I find it absolutely like I just find myself like finding the video and watching it again and again and again, because I mean, you guys know how good Ben Proud is, and he comes out this turn and makes Ben look like a child. And I love Ben, and I'm sure he would just laugh at me saying it, but it's unreal how good this guy is. Like, he just flies to 15 off this turn, and it's just, yeah, it's a mesmerizing swim. So that's the one that's really stood out to me recently. And the one that I'd say I was on poolside for, again, I'm just going to go on recent memory, but it was that meet I told you about where I'd done this relay with my dad and Chad, and Chad entered the 200 fly. It was like the first event of the Sunday of this level 3 open meet in Plymouth, where I think you couldn't enter the 200 fly if you were faster than like 2:35 or something. And he goes 1:49.6 on a Sunday afternoon. It was quicker than he went at World Champs the year before. It was good enough for silver medal that year and this year. He was obviously much quicker this year. He's on a PB in a 200 butterfly. And it was just like the whole, I've never seen the Life Centre have such a good atmosphere. Like, everyone was on their feet cheering. It was just really cool. It was just a really cool thing to be part of. He lapped the person next to them. And it was just, I think we lose in swimming so much, like, people not loving being around that. Like, I was talking to one of the kids I used to coach at Plymouth Leander the other day, and they were whining because they were in the same heat as Matt Richards at the regional championships. And they're like, yeah, it was a bit wavy because Matt wanted to swim regions. I was like, how awesome is that? An Olympic champion swam regions and you was in a race with him. And I'm like, why on earth would you be salty about that? Like, if me at your age, like 16, could have raced like the equivalent of Matt Richards today, like, if Mark Foster had shown up or whatever, or James Gibson had shown up and raced, and I'm like, what lane were you? Was you in the lane next to him? No, it was 3 lanes away. You didn't even get his waves. It was a 50 butterfly. Like, what are you talking about? And I think people so quickly shift to this mindset of being like negative about an awesome experience. And I loved that they embraced that. It wasn't like some guys turned up and lapped everyone at a level 3 meet. Like, it wasn't about that, you know. And it's the same thing. Matt Richards wasn't there to win a regional title. He was there to go and race and do his thing, right? And I love seeing that embraced, and I think people miss the beauty of them sort of things these days more than they should.
You've talked a lot about Chad, obviously, a massive name in swimming, a legend, been through a roller coaster of a ride, that's for sure. And you could see that as well recently in a few interviews and talking about his experiences. But I just wanted to ask you, because obviously you've got a great relationship with Chad. How did that come about? And what is it like to coach someone of that caliber? Does there pressure come with it? Is there moments where you think, all right, okay, here we go, got to figure this one out?
So first of all, how did it come about? And I mean, as you're probably aware, there was a pro training group in Turkey at the Gloria Sports Center that run up until, I think it ran up to the beginning of 2020, so just before COVID. And it was awesome. I never got to go and be part of it, but it was loved by everyone who done it. It was kind of the first of its kind in terms of pro swimming. And then when that got pulled the plug, a lot of the athletes didn't really have great options. And especially someone like Chad, who's just not supported by the South African Swimming Federation anyways, he doesn't have like a natural place to go. You know, if someone like Ben didn't really have a great option either, but some people had their national federations to fall back on, and it was like, okay, it's not the end of the world. But someone like Chad didn't really know what to do. Then COVID comes around. It's hard to swim, and basically leading up to the Olympics, James Gibson just sort of went on the road with him and just tried to find something to end up swimming all right at the Olympics. But it was not a long-term solution. And, you know, we then had ISL, which is like the best training camp for 3 months. And, you know, Chad then doesn't have an option, like a plan after. And James actually said to him, you should probably look at something like Loughborough Uni. They've got a great team there, and find a pro group where you're in a fixed place. But Chad kind of likes his lifestyle of being on the road and getting to travel. So James said, well, then your next best option is probably Sonny, because now going back to my point of the story, I was coaching Plymouth Leander. They let me go and do the Naples leg of ISL. And then I basically, at the end of Naples, James said, hey, we want you to come to the next leg. So I go home. I say, look, I know it's hard. I've got to be away for another 4 weeks, but they really want me to do it. And I really want to do it. And they were like, well, it's not going to work. James actually called my boss and said, we'll pay however much it costs for you to find a replacement for the month. I understand as a club why they weren't able to do it. So there's no hard feelings or animosity. But I basically left my job to go and do more ISL, which I don't regret in the slightest. So I'm in this position where I've got nothing going on. Chad needs a coach. James kind of just said, well, if you don't want to go and find a place that's full-time, Sonny's your guy. So I fly out to South Africa and we just do that. Like we're on the road a bit too much, and we're just sort of making training camps where we can. But in terms of pressure, but for the first, till the minute before the 200 butterfly final at Commonwealth Games, I felt no pressure. And I say that because when he come to start working with me off the back of the Olympics, he had done nothing, like nothing for so long. And the fact that he got a silver and a bronze medal last year at World Short Course Champs, and from the 4 weeks before that, he come to ISL and wasn't swimming for 2 weeks because he had a knee injury. Before that, he hadn't swum for 2 weeks. He then basically, we couldn't work him hard during ISL because we just needed him to race, and he just come back from an injury. So we kind of, done what we can to get him swimming half decently at the ISL final so we could win. And then we've got like 10 days in Dubai before World Short Course where, he's not really tapering because he's not done any work. But again, you're not working hard because he's still got to try and win medals. So like I've come at it like this guy's not done anything. I've known him for 4 months and he's not done a single bit of work. So with a little bit of work, how good is he going to be? Which is why it wasn't a surprise. Like 5 weeks before, he swam even faster than he had in 3 years. I think his 200 fly was at that level 3 Plymouth meet. And then you start to feel the pressure when the expectations to win the 200 butterfly, and you realize, it's not as simple as just winning. But I didn't feel pressure, and I also just had belief in what we were doing, and that's why even after he'd started to work with another coach and he swims a PB in Melbourne, it didn't surprise me for him to swim a PB because that had kind of been our focus. And if I go back to what I say, I love PBs, and Chad just likes to win medals. I love getting PBs, and that was what I'd said from day one with Chad. Like, we're going to get you a PB this year, and he'd worked with another coach 5 weeks. So I didn't get to be on poolside with it, but I also can't stand here and say to you that PB come because I done something magical in 7 months. Because when you've got an athlete like Chad, I'm sure if you two ladies were on poolside and just made sure he turned up to training every day and gave him half decent work, he could swim super fast and win world titles. So, I think my sort of job for Chad was just making sure he was accountable for the time I was with him. And I think that's why ultimately he swam really well by the end of this year. And we just come up a little short in the long course season.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. And it's actually really humbling to hear a coach not like brag about what they've done or who they've coached or how they've got their athlete, actually respect the athlete for themselves as well and what they do. And it's really, really humbling to hear, a coach who's, achieved so much, such as yourself, be able to do that. And I'm intrigued. I had written down another question, but I had another one that kind of just popped into my head just now. A lot of coaches, hone their craft through courses and following models like Albrecht and all that. Is there any, for you becoming the coach, a lot of it comes down to maybe coaching intuition. Do you have, where do you get like your research and expanding your knowledge? Is it based off of seeing other coaches, experience that you've had? Do you research different sort of like sports science journals? Like, how do you, I guess, grow and expand your knowledge as a coach and when it comes to writing your training sets, if that makes sense?
Yeah, Absolutely. I guess as just someone who's always been obsessed, it's kind of been just my constant sort of search for information. And I guess the first place would be, and like one of the biggest learning points is things like this podcasts and the ability to listen to not just swimming coaches but athletics coaches and sports coaches. You know, I'm sure you watched, I think it was The Playbook on Netflix, where you had like coaches like Jose Mourinho talk about, you know, his coaching journey with Chelsea and into Milan and stuff, and the amount you can learn from a story like that is huge. So I think I'm going a little bit further back. I think every coach sort of has a starting point, and then based on that starting point, they find their own philosophy, and it's when that happens that a coach can really be a coach. And I think having left someone like Dave Champion, who has a very, I think, clear way of coaching, he has a very clear coaching style, and I love Dave Champion as a coach. I thought he was brilliant when I swam for him, and you know, I sort of lent towards more his sort of coaching style at first, and then I noticed, well, I wasn't coaching his kids as good as Dave had at Ipswich, so that didn't work as well. So I had to adapt to the kids I had in the Middle East who weren't used to someone like a Dave Champion coming in, and so I adapted based on that, and I found my own ways to motivate and energize the kids in training, which I personally do. I think that's one of my best assets as a coach is my ability to motivate. Technical side of things, I think I've just watched so much swimming that I have an understanding. I don't know anything about physics, but I think I understand a little bit about swimming physics because I've watched so much, and also I can apply things to my own basic level of swimming. Training sessions, I think, again, you have to understand and feel, and I've felt training sessions. I feel like what works for me, but then also I've had enough time with athletes to play and work out what works with them, and I've had great people in my corner. You know, like from Dave at Ipswich to then, like when I was in the Middle East, Ash Morris, who's now the director of swimming at Repton, he always took a liking to me, and we had a lot of stimulating chats. I feel like you know, I learned so much from him in sort of finding my own sort of way to coach. And then more recently with people like James Gibson and Tom Rushton, I think they're both some of the best coaches the sport has to offer, and I've learned endless amounts. And I think when you asked me about the pressure working with someone like Chad, I think the pressure was so alleviated by having people like James and Tom in my corner, that if I ever had questions or weren't sure what to do on any given moment, I could give either of them a call and be like, hey, I don't want to mess up here. What should I do in this situation? And that put my mind at rest so much, having them sort of guys to support me. I probably shouldn't, but in terms of training courses, I'll tell you this story because it makes me laugh. I was on, so going into last season, so end of 2021, I was on the senior level 3 coaching course, whatever it's called nowadays, for Swim England. And you have to apply for that, and you have to have, I think, 10 swimmers at a regional level to be on this course. So I was coaching at Plymouth Leander. My national squad had enough regional swimmers to qualify, so I'm on this course, right? And then I go and do ISL, and then I leave my job. So I have to tell up front, I'm like, okay, I'm no longer coaching at Plymouth, but I am coaching I guess a pro group. And they're like, who's in your pro group? And I list the names, and there was, I think, 7 or 8 swimmers at the time, and we're about to go to World Short Course Championships, and they're like, you don't have 10 regional level swimmers. So basically they again, it wasn't like a malice thing, but they offered to postpone my course a year or give me a refund. So I didn't get kicked off, but I kind of got kicked off my level 3 coaching course. And I think 10 days that day after, you know, the camp I'd organised in Dubai led to a world record in Siobhan. Tom's her main coach, so I'm not going to say I coached her, but I was coaching her in some capacity. And I think of them 7 or 8 athletes, I think 5 got a medal at World Short Course. So I don't know. I'm not actually a level 3 or senior coach in the UK. I'm still a level 2 coach. And I can't honestly say I've learned anything from any coaching course in my coaching career. So I don't know. That's an answer to that bit of the question.
I'm just having a laughing fit. Sorry, that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. I don't even know what to say to that. That's just that's outrageous. My last question, I would like to wrap up with, basically, I want to know about your swim programs, what you have to offer. I think everyone needs to hear that kind of stuff.
Finding out what your swim programs are, I think it ties in that even though you're not a level 3 coach, but you do have the odd knowledge of, international athletes, the medalists and world record holders. So, I think it'd be really important for us to hear, what your programs entail and how people can get access to them.
Yeah. So I just wanted to quickly say in terms of how I've learned as a coach, but I think one thing that coaches have egos, and I try and have as little an ego as I possibly can. And that means I ask, and we continue to ask anyone for help, and ask questions. And I think swimmers should ask questions to their coaches, and I think coaches should ask questions to other coaches. But onto my swim program. So you can go to my website, www.theswimsuitguy.co.uk, and basically it doesn't matter who you are. You can sign up to a program. They're priced basically on how many sessions you want to do a week. And then we have a chat, we have a phone call, a Zoom call, and you tell me when you're going to race. You tell me, when you want to get fast by, and we make a full training plan based on that. So if you've got Masters World Champs in May, then we have 5 months of work, and you'll be rested and ready to swim in May. Right now, it's kind of mega personalized. I chat with all my athletes after each session, and you send me videos, and I give you feedback. I'm obviously not going to be on deck coaching with you, but I know there's so many swimmers in the world that don't have a coach, and they swim in public sessions, or they swim on their own, and I want to be able to help you guys out. So if you're interested in that, then check out the website. If not, check me out on, I guess, all the social media things, the Swimsuit Guy, and that's kind of me.
I think, and I'll let Hannah speak as well, because I'm sure she wants to say how wonderful this episode has been, but it's been a real pleasure to have you on. Like I said earlier, I've definitely been aware of you on social media, your presence, what you've been up to, but actually to have the opportunity to just sit and chat to you for a little bit and get to know who you are a bit more and what you're about, it's been really, really good, and we really appreciate it. And some of the things you've said there, I know I'll definitely take forwards. Like you said, we're constantly learning. It's important to ask questions and stuff like that. So just thank you so much for your time. Honestly, Sonny, I'm excited to just follow where you go. There's no limit, I don't think, to where you're going to go with this. So thank you so much for your time. But I will also pass over to Hannah now.
Yeah, just reiterating what Lauren said, a huge thank you for everything. And for me, the takeaway point, I love the fact that you said celebrate the small victories. I do think it's so important, especially for developing athletes coming through, and not just developing athletes, athletes that have hit a plateau, whether it's master swimmers or elite swimmers. I think it's really important. That mindset is so key, and to have a coach that's so adaptive and understanding, and as you say, doesn't have an ego but has their own personal philosophy, I think is really, really important. So thank you very much for kind of giving us more an insight as to who Sonny Trigg is, who's behind the Swimsuit Guy, and look forward to keeping up, on tabs of your social media content and your vlogs, and hopefully see you on a international poolside soon.
Oh, thanks ever so much, ladies, and thanks for doing this podcast as well. I think the more we have in this swimming space is the better. And so cheers for you guys doing the podcast.
You're very welcome. And to the listeners, we hope you've enjoyed it. I mean, we know you will have done. That was a really insightful episode. So great way to kick off the new year, and we will see you very soon.